Hello, and welcome to the Creative Playing Podcast Network. Join us as we get to share some great convention panels we were able to attend at CoKoCon 2019 up in Phoenix, Arizona. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kellie, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, assigned to Ragnarok Story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and rpgpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
So, since we're early, as we want to be, and no one can stop us, this is when you may ask me anything. And is anyone under 18 in this room? You're so cheeky. Within reason, you can ask me anything. If it would actually get me brought up on charges, I won't answer. So, do you have an abyss? I do, and I always have to ask the age because I did that for a panel. I think it was at Phoenix Fan Fest, and one of the first questions out of the gate, I was like, "You cannot ask that in mixed company. There's a 12-year-old right next to you." What are you thinking? It's 2 in the afternoon. No one has time for that. No. It's too early in the day for that kind of cheekiness. Hello! Welcome. Now, you need those questions for no earlier than 5 in the afternoon. It's for the gin hour or later. Does everyone know about gin hour? Gin AM. Gin AM. In Scotland, they have a very charming tradition, it turns out, at least in Edinburgh. You have tea, of course, at 2. And then after tea, around 4 or 5, you have gin hour. And then you have dinner with wine. And then, apparently, you have champagne with the delightful gentleman upstairs. And then, apparently, you have rum with the rum merchant. And after the rum, apparently, it's whiskey hour. But I don't remember that hour as well. I mean, her favourite.
She just remembers she had a very good time in Scotland.
Lovely. Also, haggis was delightful. Especially after gin hour.
At the end of the night, after all of that, you don't know what that is.
No, I mean, I don't think I was ever sober whilst I was in Edinburgh. I stopped drinking after the whiskey hour, but I didn't stop metabolizing for another 12 hours. Truly. So Stirling and going to the castle and up and down the hills and whatnot in Edinburgh was delightfully painless. Because apparently I was inebriated. So, Scotland.
Our forefathers.
That's some of us.
Mine.
Yes. Ginger menace. Yes.
So, Madam, when is the next time you'll be up in Phoenix?
Oh, what's an excellent question. Thank you, my friend. It turns out that in October I shall be at the Blossom House in Heritage Square, hosting 3 different teas, sort of historical Victorian teas, but the theme is Victorian oddities. You could say proud. I know. Yes. I didn't name it, I'm just rolling with it, it's lovely. And so I'm doing presentations before each tea about tea history and etiquette. Then I'll be joining you for tea, and Joseph will be assisting me. So that's the 17th and 18th of October.
19th, 20th.
19th and 20th. This is why Joseph is magical.
Tickets are on sale now.
Thank you. And they are discount sales, so it's good to buy them sooner rather than later. I think halfway through September the price goes up. So Yes. Yes.
Is this the legendary Joseph Gaxio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is your brother Frank?
Yes. You know Frank?
I know Frank very well.
Oh, cool.
It's such a small world.
Yes.
We'll chat. Sorry,
Okay.
sorry, I didn't ask a question about you.
We'll talk. We'll talk.
We'll talk.
Yeah, he's my little brother.
She did say nothing was off limits.
Yeah.
Also, you don't have to ask me questions. You should definitely talk to Joseph. He's a
I
delight.
shall.
This is Connie. Connie is an amazing puppeteer and artist.
Oh, then of course you
Of
know
course.
Frank. Okay, yes.
So the connection is made. My work here is done. That was the panel. So yes, this is the next time in Phoenix. I have an adventure before then in San Diego. And then we have a big adventure in December in Tucson, which you're all very cordially invited to. It's tea for 125 people. We do it every December for funsies. It's called the Dickens Tea. And we have a wonderful time, and then I don't talk to anyone afterwards for a good 3 weeks.
So we all kind of go into the
No, so many pastries.
I see.
Right. Oh, these two.
It's lovely.
Yes.
And the tables are each decorated with a different theme.
Yes. So much fun.
Dressed.
When is that?
That is, I think, the 14th of December. And I mean, if someone's mum and auntie wanted to go, I could probably arrange tickets for his mum and auntie.
We'll see if they can.
Let me know.
Unfortunately, I cannot. I'm working the Mesa Book Festival
Well, that's a good reason though.
with Bob and Sharon.
I love Bob and Sharon. That's why it's a good reason.
It is 40.
I think it's the 14th. I'm 98% sure.
But if you check out the Tucson Steampunk Society's Facebook page, it will be posted.
Eventually, yes. Is it posted yet? No.
But keep an eye out, because once the tickets get posted as open, they go quickly.
We sell out every year. Last year we sold out in 10 days. So, or was it 7 days last year?
It was
It's
crazy.
very fast.
It was very,
But we always put out like a warning to let you know that it's going to go on sale. Like save the date, buy your tickets in this window, and then save the date. Here's the tea, and all of that. So it will be coming probably in the next week or two.
And it has different things like the table decorating, fashion show, and the auctions. There's a silent auction.
Silent auction and raffle. These
Yes.
two are responsible for.
Yes.
Yay.
And I
Lots of
recall, Rachel,
donations.
she did very well in the raffle last year.
Yeah.
You got the big.
I may be going to Gaslight
picture
next
announcement.
month with my compatriot.
That's how I got here. CoKoCon. I got tickets.
Right, and then I was like,
Because they were donated.
Want to do a panel too? Want to work at the con?
Why not? I'm going to be here. I'll do more than one.
Oh, that's so good. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
So good to see you. We're just, chatting because we're early. We have 4 more minutes.
Are you going to be at the Wild West Con?
Well, that's the intent. So, I don't have cards for that one, but it is March 6th, 7th, and 8th. How do I remember those dates? I remember none others that are sooner than them. Although I remember the dates in 2020, but forget about the dates in 2019.
Well, you
Magic and mystery.
That's so this year.
That and your temper entourage has you bouncing back and forth.
No, no,
back
time
and forth.
travel.
Time
Very
travel.
difficult.
It makes it difficult for you to
It's
fixate. So right now you're fixated on the future.
Right.
So we just have to get you the right tea
I
to put you
know.
back in the present.
I know why I'm fixating on the future. It's because of that, Paris fashion show with the LED paniers. It's so good. 2071, I'm telling you. LED paniers. So good. They match beautifully with the sort of floating platform shoes. So you're like the running lights to go with you as you're floating. It's a safety feature, but oh so fashionable. That's 2071.
Fabric with the self-elevating train.
Oh, I do love the self-elevating train.
No longer dragging children down the aisle.
Oh. No, that's so 2049. So, alright. Oh, we're almost there. Oh. Should I pass me one of those? Yes. Thank you. Of course, thanks. Right. So, wearing a corset and bustle and all of the accoutrement makes me appear very lazy because I'm always like, would you fetch that thing for me? But in truth, I'm just like, well, moving is it's a lot. It's like my own CrossFit regimen. Just getting through a room, carrying a lot of weight. I'm not doing that rope thing where you weep and pray that Helga will stop whipping you with her braids. But I am sort of like trying to navigate with the whole bustle thing and not fall over, because if you fall, you're like a turtle. Done for. Especially if you fall on your back. No. And you know, that did happen to me once. I was like doing sort of a pratfall because of certain agents of the caffeinotti.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were thinking of the corgi at first.
Oh, the corgi! Oh, the corgi incident.
The corgi incident.
Let's not even start this one thing. We can't discuss the corgis. Hello. Hello. Excellent timing. How was your panel?
It was lovely.
Excellent.
It went over.
Twist some shows?
Yes.
Highly entertaining.
Brilliant. Good. Good to go over. You know, we got here early. We've just been chatting about future fashions. And, you know, corgis.
Turtles.
Turtles. And turtles. We're not going to discuss the corgi incident until after cocktails.
Whiskey hour.
Yeah, always whiskey hour. By the time we get to whiskey hour, I'll probably answer anything. Woe betides you for asking. Who knows what I'll say? Shall we? Yeah, we should. So, hello. This mysterious woman next to me is Temperance, Honoria Everett. She is currently apparently engaged with the evil Terran Federation. We forgive her for her world domination plans because she's just so charming.
I looked in the wrong mirror this morning.
We've talked about that, you know. You're supposed to look in the one with the apple.
Yes.
So like, oh, you're so pretty. It's like good affirmations.
I know, and I forgot my gold sash too. If I was gonna be, oh, I do. I have the gold lame sash.
Yes, of course. So, Temperance is a fine dressmaker, costumer. You have. I'm just going to introduce her. That's just how I roll. Temperance.
I roll D20s, but you know.
Temperance has a long history of costuming on her shoulder. You have to watch out. There was a raid on her green tea stalls. Temperance threw herself into the fray.
Yes.
Preserving the tea, saving my honour, and also my dress.
And the tea.
And the tea. So good. And I appreciate that. You know,
I did not come out unscathed.
really the way you fended them off with the creamer and the butter knife was remarkable.
Yes. But the teapot ship handle.
The teapot. We are here to talk about undergarments, but also other things. So this is Temperance, queen of the teapot shiv.
Very terrifying now.
And dressmaker extraordinaire, and my dear friends. Would you like to introduce me, or shall I? Would you like a fan? All right. Oh, good. We've been doing this for many years, and it's the first time I've broken that.
thinking about the dinner.
Oh, the titter!
And the fact that
You're tittering! You're the
Titter,
titter!
I go supersonic.
I mean, the corgi in it, I mean! So, I am Madame Askew, and we are cheeky strumpets, both of us, but also dressmakers and steampunks, and I'm a professional corsetier, so I make corsets, custom corsets, and all of the underpinnings that make your Victorian silhouette. I've been making costumes for 20-ish years. It's hard time travel to keep track. And we both fell in to steampunk
Hard.
roughly a decade ago.
It bruised.
It did. Stuck. So did the gears. I cannot imagine where the gears will get.
All the nooks and crannies.
I said glue some gears on it and call it steampunk. Woo! I'm not certain I got that one right. But I felt very dedicated. So, yes, I run the Tucson Steampunk Society with a host of other delightful and demented individuals. And I travel in North America, mainly, doing steampunk presentations. I have met many of you before, so you are aware of how my panels go, which is like this. And for those whom I have not met before, I'm so delighted to see you here. Thank you for joining us. There will be valuable information, but also stories about corgis. I'm just waiting. You're fine, I'm right.
I'm good.
Hope springs eternal. So tonight, for your entertainment and edification, we have not only brought what I'm wearing now, but we've brought another ensemble to show you the different sorts of pieces that you can put together for a more historically, I hate to use accurate, because I detest that, historically accurate. I don't detest people striving for really deep historical, detail. What I detest about it is it just feels so constricting, and we do steampunk, so we're not trying to achieve accuracy. But
The only thing constricting we like is our corsets.
well, yes. And boy, do we apparently like that. Not when it's 115, though.
Yes.
I'll do it, but I don't like it. Oh my gosh, do you remember that year? Yeah. Oh, I remember. Phoenix, you betrayers. I love you. That was a terrible fan fest. Thank goodness for that walk-in freezer. So, that's not even hyperbole. Steampunk Boba Fett and I literally hung out in a walk-in freezer, and you could watch the steam just like coming off of us.
Literal steam.
Literal steam.
punks.
We were literal steampunks.
And the power outage at the same time. Oh.
Yes, there was a power outage. We digress. So this, we have two different silhouettes to show you some of how history put together a bustle dress, which is what we are both wearing. We're both doing sort of a early bustle 1870s style silhouette. That one is a little bit of a later bustle, 1885-ish. And we can talk about a bit of the differences. And tomorrow you can watch it on me.
Yes.
Walking through the halls.
It's normal.
Yeah, you're getting the sneak peek, as it were. So, all right, shall we do this?
Yes, let's
all
do
right,
this.
we've got to stand,
Although
don't
we
we?
should tell them what type of dresses.
Oh, what? Do you want to give them
Mention that.
information?
Yes.
Right. So, we're both wearing a polonaise. And the polonaise is a very interesting garment from the 1800s, the 19th century, in that it's actually a Victorian cosplay.
Yes.
So the Victorians were like,
Remember that, the 1700s,
the
where they had those
1780s.
really great fashions.
Yeah, and also like the 1760s, and they did that sort of shepherdess polonaise thing, want that back. We should do that. I mean, really, we can all wear it. It was like a fad that went for a few years. So it's an interesting garment in that
It's all one piece.
it's
as
all one
opposed
piece.
Well, you have the underskirt.
Right. But
But
the
then
dress, the
It's all
overdress,
one piece as opposed to a separate.
two-piece maneuver. Kick it out.
Stepping on that train.
Do you need me to come fetch your train, or should I get that corgi?
That's the elevated train from the future.
I'm really sorry about not bringing the hydraulics back with us for that one. So, yes. So the other thing about the polonaise is that it comes from Polish fashion, and in the 18th century they were like, those Polish hussars are so stylish. Love the leopard, shoulder leopard, the wings, very good. We should take their coat and turn it into a dress, as you do when you're French. And so the English were like, well, that's pretty good, we'll do it too, why not? The French are pretty keen. And then there was like death, destruction, lots of people losing their heads, and the English were like, no. Polonaise. And so it sort of went into like a little bit of into the recesses. And then by the 1870s, they were like, the guillotine was not all that bad. And really, there's a lot of charm. The hussars are really lovely, still doing the wings, still with the leopard over the shoulder. Not certain that's great, logistically in an actual cavalry charge, but you do you, Poland. And
Keep you warm in the wintertime.
well, that's right. And apparently the wings actually are terrifying. So, if you go to see some lovely drag queens and they do that gorgeous snap with their big fans, that I lust after the wrist action to do it, because clearly this is very sad. That's sad. That fan has no... But anyway, the hussar wings, which are over their heads like this, we really need some to make our polonaise really pop. Let's push it. The hussar wings are like this, and when you're riding in on a horse, they actually make that snapping sound like a horde of drag queens coming. And I hear it's terrifying. And they didn't put fear into the hearts of, the Russians until it didn't, and the French and the Belgians were not very keen, and Lithuania was like, no! Run away! The hussars are coming, and they are giving us side eyes. So yes, without the wings, the Polish dress gets translated into France. It gets translated again by the Victorians, and this is what you get. Our lovely polonaise sans wings. You need wings, especially for Wild West Queen.
I mean, we do the wild
I know!
Yeah.
What is it, holidays? So good! I just want the kind that flap in the breeze with terror. So good. Snap. Yeah. We're coming for you. See, I feel like we could make that happen. Maybe I'll just put really big fans on the back and just snap them at people. So, right. So this is a
All of a sudden,
polonaise.
I hear the Ride of the Valkyries in my head.
Yes! I feel like that would be really good, as if we bring some, speakers and our muscles, and we could just be like, it's time! I'm certain we could do it. So, clearly the polonaise is slightly less sort of militant by the time it gets to us, but it's still like a very charming little fad. And as steampunks, we really like it because it's, infinitely, changeable.
It's kind of less fussy.
It is less
I
fussy.
want something just a little easier, a little less fussy.
It's one piece.
That's what a polonaise.
Yeah. One piece, no fuss, no muss, easy peasy. And it does give good bustle, so that's nice.
You don't have to have it bustled all the way up.
No, I mean, some of us are in charge of the long bustle, whereas I like to pull mine up for more emphasis, as it were. It's the nice nice thing about bustles. You know, sometimes when I am encouraging people to embrace the bustle, to dive in, they'll say to me, "But madam, I already have a bustle." Because they are chagrined, nay, even ashamed by the size of their posterior. They are experiencing some sort of delusion that they think any human posterior can naturally achieve this shape. Because it cannot. I could definitely rest a teacup on there. And no, because we've done it.
Teacup balanced.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
One in the front and one in the back.
Oh, I can't do that.
Can you do both at the same time?
No, not with this cane.
No, if you drop your knees like this.
Screw the book on your head, right?
Right.
30-yard dash.
So, anyway.
30-inch dash, perhaps.
So, you know, this bustle is definitely like some structure under there. And it's all about the sachet. It's all about drawing the eye to a certain part of the anatomy. I think you know the parts I'm talking about. Yeah, that's good. And it also creates a visual illusion that there's like, the waist is smaller because there's so much down here. It's like, of course, she's Scarlett O'Hara. Look at her badonkadonk. So good. And then if you want to really emphasize, then you add a lot up here at the shoulders. So the Victorians loved their optical illusions in fashion, and so they would create a silhouette through the fashion, in this case, by dropping the shoulder a little bit, making the shoulders appear wider, and then of course you are corseted, but the clever thing about a corset makes you look narrower from the front, but wider from the side. Just shifts everything around. Corsets are not capable of actually creating a black hole on the inside and sucking away any of the mass. And they just move it around cunningly.
Up, then push it
Down,
then
right.
push it back.
A lot of down and up, as you can see. So then having this little, this tiny little addition just sort of emphasizes that. And then when I walk, or Temperance walks, you can't take your eye away from it. Because it's just like, yeah, it's there. Look at that. Oh my God. Temperance, that look. Oh my goodness. That was a lot. Oh, clearly the
I have knocked things off tables.
is agreeing with her. It's a lot of sassafras, Temperance. Oh my goodness. But see, you can't look away. The bustle just calls the eye.
It's hypnotic.
Right. It's mesmerism, and it's the way ladies were trying to sort of win at the marriage mart, was to mesmerise people with the bustle. And, since we can't be showing our ankles, scandal. No. We have to show off the bustle instead. So, and then you can just be like, oh dear Lord Cornwall, I have no idea what you think I am, but certainly I'm just a shy young lady who has a large dowry. Yes, those two. So that's sort of the bustle is creating this idea, but it also is underpinnings. So there's some stuff going on underneath. Shall we show them?
Yes, we shall start
Yes.
to.
Can you tell us about yardage?
Yardage. Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, I can.
So a polonaise is somewhere between 4 and 6 yards, depending on how much, floof you want at the back. Bubble room, yeah. Temperance and I tend to like a lot. So we put a whole 60-inch panel in the back of our bustle, and we gather that into 10 inches.
Wow.
And then I pull mine up in poofs.
You'll see mine, the one I'm wearing tomorrow will be poof. Extra
Poofage.
Yes.
So much poof. Hello.
I wasn't waving at you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was waving at you. Oh my goodness.
Not to disturb you, which this is now become a disturbance.
No, we'll just talk more about corgis. You're fine.
You're cinching up corgis?
Bustling corgis.
No, I like to smuggle them in under my bustles. And then they sort of like move me around. So I am held
Like them with
on a corgi table. Yeah, no, it's true.
like
Actually,
human corgis.
we are human corgis.
Victorian porn is very interesting.
So anyway, about 4 to 6 yards. But that's the outer layer. You do need some internal structure, some, interlining and interfacing to make this very smooth, tailored look. So,
Is there traditionally, does it matter whether it's just to the waist or longer than the waist? Or
so it's
baby, do you stop at the belly button? Is what
I
wanna know.
stop at the belly button with mine. With Temperance's, we made it longer, but she's.
I have a longer waist though.
You have a shorter waist.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I like the longer.
You like the longer waist. Whereas I'm like, no, show off the lower parts. It's really good.
That's where the corgis are.
That's right.
Allow me.
Yes, madam. Sorry. Yes, Mrs.
They run-
Temperance.
Very close in the shoulders.
Right.
So-
Everything's very snug and very tailored. So this is the internal structure. You can see. Oh, I missed a poof. I shall have to finish it with this safety pin. It's very efficient. So you can see that they pulled up the poofs on tapes, and that is really taken right out of the Victorian playbook. And part of why I like the tapes is because when I want to clean it, I can just pull out the pins, or if you wanted to be historically accurate, you'd actually tack it and then snip your threads every time you wanted to
And
clean
then
it.
resew it every time.
But I'm lazy, so I use safety
No,
pins.
you have the modern time travel, and you can use other means.
That's right. Now, I've heard some people say they use snaps, but have you ever sewn in a snap? So boring. Just going around and around in a circle forever. So I'd rather use safety pins because snaps bore me. So, yeah.
So there's no boning at all in this?
Not in this one.
Okay.
There is in my other bodice. Here, let me take this. So, there's no boning, but there is actually twill as the lining, which is actually a very light lining for something like this. So often I actually line my bodices in cotton organdy or couture, which is the same fabric I make my corsets out of. Or I might even use canvas, although that's very hot and unfortunate life decision. But sometimes
It doesn't breathe.
does not breathe.
But it lasts forever.
It does, but you know what you should not do with canvas? Also line your sleeves with it. And then wear it to Phoenix Comic Con on the hottest year. So don't do that. But the torso should be lined with something fairly stiff. And then you'll see here, you can see how this back panel is added actually on a separate tape where I've pleated the whole thing into that little space. I guess it's more like, it might be 12 inches. So hard to tell. People are always lying to me about
That's closer to 18.
8 and 8. That's 16. 16. Usually I do 10, but 16 is fine. So I'm going to pass this around and you're all going to look at it and not judge me. So I did a very unfortunate thing with the facings in this one, but I was in a hurry.
Yes.
So they're kind of raw, but they do the job. And it is very soft construction, which was purposeful because I was wearing it to Wild Wild West Con, which is the wrong temperature for everything, but a very good time. So, all right.
The linen makes it a lot more bearable.
This is the last piece you put in? All the rest of it's assembled and then you add this last?
Not quite last, but very close. So, depending on how I'm trimming it out. But yeah, that back panel is one of the last things that go in. Normally, I actually do my sleeves very last.
It doesn't appear there's much that's tricky about this particular sleeve.
No.
And I'm wanting to know, I know that
Well,
you
the
went
tricky part is in the
pleats.
in the pleat.
The other tricky part is positioning the sleeves. Because the sleeves are shaped, they're usually made out of 2 pieces and they have a slight curve in them. And if you twist that even a ½ inch, you will not be able to lower your arms. Ask me how I know.
That's Statue of Liberty, right?
So who here has seen my green and gold dress? Yeah, all right. So I made this very flamboyant dress that is emerald green and very gold and what is it like? 60. So what is it, like 10 yards of pleats at the bottom or something like that?
easy.
Pleats for days, so it is very heavy. Yeah, oh God, no, that's all right. It was 30 feet, right? So it was 10 yards. I remember because I counted every foot. So, and it's polyester and it's just very warm, but luxurious. And I made it, and then I was like, oh, and I'm just going to wear it as soon as I finish it. It's a terrible plan, but I'm going to do it. And so I show up at Gaslight Expo, and I put it on for the big debut. And I get the sleeves on, and I realise, this
You're
is my
doing your
position.
Evita, right?
Right, all day. 12 hours of Evita. I could do this. I could do this. I could not do this. I could not do this. I had this range of motion. And at a certain point, I just became very zen about it.
And the funny thing was, I was working on my outfit at the same time, and I'm like, oh, I'll just measure where the line goes on hers.
Oh no.
We were both like this all day.
Like the whole time, I had like marks on my. I was like,
So the position of the sleeve really matters because that bend really follows the natural sort of relaxed bend of your arm. But again, if you get it wrong, your arm's like...
Were you able to redo the sleeve?
Oh,
we
yes.
did.
Yes. Oh my goodness, it was the first thing we did.
When we got back, we're like, rip those sleeves right out.
After I contemplated setting on fire.
I'm glad you
There were tears.
And then I was chopped down from the edge by both Temperance and the Grand Arbiter in different times. There were a lot of phone calls with tears. And then I pulled out the razor blade and everything was fine.
Wow.
She uses clarification. She uses a razor blade to take out.
Oh.
She does not use a seam ripper.
No.
most efficient way.
No, I'm that kind of lady.
And then
Yeah.
she had me do the other sleeve
That's
with
so
a
good.
razor blade.
So a tattoo of a razor blade, we'll know why.
Yes, you will. There are 2 tattoos I'm now contemplating. Pockets, just the words.
Yes.
And apparently razor blade, right? Like, yeah, I'm a Victorian. So that's me. So, right, sorry.
Continue.
Yes, we should. So this is the foundation skirt, as it's called, and it sort of evolved from the petticoats that are in folkloric dress, and that, farmers' wool and that sort of pastoral thing. Also from, again, the 18th century, they'd wear sort of foundation garments of paniers and a petticoat over that, and then they'd have a petticoat, which is really a skirt, sort of showed a little bit under their overdress, and that arrangement of multiple pieces to make a dress continued to be the case really into the 20th century. So when you hear someone talking about a dress in the 19th century or earlier, they usually mean like multiple piece thing that you put on together, and it looks like one thing, but it's really made out of 10 million pieces.
No.
And it weighs a lot.
Oh,
As you can tell, even that is what I call lightweight, and still has a bit of heft to it.
If you felt the green and gold, you would be like, oh.
Yeah, no, that, and also the ambassadorial costumes.
The black and gold.
The black and gold.
I'd love to hear how you talk to your chiropractor. So you see,
I don't have
this
one.
way.
It would be
Perhaps you
interesting.
should.
Yeah, probably. That would be good. All right. I have done acupuncture, and she's always like, you have some sort of, energy that seems to be trapped places. Might be the corset.
she's
I
got
don't
the
know.
gear.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Let me pray to the sartorial gods.
Assume the position while I.
Yes. Do you need help?
No, I got it.
All right. Good.
It takes me a little while to bend.
I mean, there's so much here too. So the skirt is about 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 if you add any scarf on my bust. This is also a very lightweight garment on purpose. We'll show you the orange skirt. This one is unlined, which is unusual for me, because again, I wanted something actually sort of conducive to wearing in our climate. Yes. It does have a pocket, which is absolutely historical. They put pockets in everything. They didn't carry handbags the way modern people do, or satchels. It would cut the lines of their garment, so they can't have that. No. So they put pockets everywhere. And some of the original garments will have a pocket in the top seam of their bodice. They have one in the center seam that points this way, where they could stuff a pocket watch. They'll have them in the waistband. They'll have them in the sides of skirts. They put pockets everywhere, up the
You might have a
sleeve.
decorative one on the front for your parasol.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, that parasol gets really in the way, so it's nice to throw a pocket in there. So, and then you can see, this is more typical, the very narrow space into which I will pleat that 60 inches of fabric to give me a really good full back. Now, on my things and Temperance's things, we usually serge because we're steampunks, and we do what we want. So, at this point, you can start to see how the shape is developed.
So normally, here you've already shed 2 layers.
Yes.
A garment like that, you would be already at 3 layers.
That's true. That's true to get to this point.
So now you're to your 4th layer.
Right, so this is my petticoat. And the thing with getting a really nice bustle silhouette is that I highly recommend at least 1 petticoat. This garment I have underneath here is full of bones. So many of them. And if you don't put a little softening on it in the form of...
You can see it more.
You can see the bones. You can definitely feel them all the time. But you don't want to see them. There's the surprise. So you soften it up with the petticoat. But also the petticoats help support the hem of your skirt. Keeps it from tangling around your ankles and gives it a nicer drape. So you'll see with my petticoat here, I actually did a double ruffle on the bottom to give it a little bit more body even, because my skirts tend to be very heavy and they need more support. The support group cannot be there all the time, so they need a little internal support.
And you could wear more than 1 petticoat.
Yes, you could.
You could have one with lots of ruffles.
So much ruffle petticoats. We tend to just wear only 1 because there's a... But if I lived up in the northern climes, for instance, I've seen those people wear 2, 3 petticoats, and one of them is quilted. multiple layers, and they're just like, well, and then I went to IKEA and I got some of that batting they used to wrap their furniture, and I wrapped that around my waist too, so it'd be nice and smooth. Oh,
They
did
could go
you?
crazy. Go for a corded petticoat.
They could. I've only done so once in terms of construction. It was an ordeal. So the thing about corded petticoats, they're lovely. You take this very lightweight fabric and you sew channels of cords around it. Around and around
and around.
all the way up.
Is it a spiral or is it a series of circles?
It's a series of circles that get smaller as you go.
But what if you did do a spiral?
I mean, that would be fun too. Absolutely.
It could be fun.
It could be.
Fun.
Just as fun. Absolutely, Edward. The thing is, if
You'll
you...
go just as blind.
And also just as mad, because actually, normally with making a garment, you cut, you stitch, you press, you stitch, you press, you stitch, you press. You're not just stitching the whole time. Yes.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
But back to the bustle.
Yes. Bring it.
Okay. Did the bustle evolve from a practical standpoint?
Partly.
Or, okay, so it's not just something that was like going, ooh, let's make her butt. Look at Becky's butt.
I mean, there was a little bit of that.
Oh, God.
But yes, it's a practical evolution.
It is so big.
So, yes, you are right. They weren't necessarily in their ateliers saying to themselves, Charles, old chum, you know what I think would be good is if we could make all the men stare at all of the women's asses. You know, I think you're right, Ferdinand. No, there was probably a bit of that. There was definitely a sense of the visual experience. But what happened is that, in part, you know, seeing the natural form undergarments was seen as very, like, loose.
Racy.
Very racy. We'd already had that with the Regency and these dresses in France where they'd get themselves wet and they'd run around in these damp dresses, clinging to themselves as if they were Grecian statues, and catching the flu, these drafty castles, and dying. But you know, it's what you do for fashion. So by the time we got to the 1840s, the skirts were getting much larger. And part of that was a reaction to the Regency and a reaction to the French and the French Revolution.
The French caused many reactions.
So many. They caused them all the time for me. So good. So, and those skirts in the 40s and 50s were very heavy, very bell-shaped, and very deadly. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. My dental fabric was a really great way to set yourself on fire and also get tangled in the petticoats because you have so many. So it was a safety feature. In the 1850s and 60s, they moved from corded petticoats and many, many petticoats to the hoop skirt or farthingale or crinoline, the crinoline. And so now at least your skirts were not tangling around your ankles, much safer, but they were even further from your body. So let's say, for instance, you needed to, I don't know, use the only source of heat and light in the house and step forward to the fireplace with your very large skirts that you can't feel, and you just wanted to, I don't know, grab the porridge or something off the hearth, and there you go, like a Roman candle. And everyone's like, well, there she, that happens. So that was really fast. Because the other thing is,
I lost 3 hands that.
Yes. Well, probably all together, because if you went to put someone out of fire and you were also wearing a hoop skirt, you too would catch on fire. And so what would happen is sometimes you'd have 3 or 4 young ladies go up at once. There they go. Well, that's fewer girls to marry off.
A great hoop skirt tragedy, 1873.
Great shells of fire.
Right. So, we're going to have a really good time at the Death of Fabric panel. Please come.
Yes.
So then, as a safety feature, they started to make what's called an elliptical hoop skirt, where the front got flatter, and they had all of this width to the sides and the back. But then, when you stepped forward to the fire, you knew right where the edge was, because you could actually reach it with your foot. Quelle surprise. Oh, there are flames there. I should stop. I might die. And so then the silhouette continued to change as they pulled more and more of that fabric to the back and bustled it up into the bustle silhouette. So that was actually a marvellous question. Thank you.
Yay.
Wonderfully put. Good, that was actually some educational material and deaf. So good. So, that's how we get to the bustle. And now we're going to get to the bustle.
To the bustle.
We are planning it. I'm so scandalous. Actually, really, truthfully, after years of doing this, I am starting to feel a little bit like, no, I'm wearing so little. It's really rather absurd.
Which is probably before we get too much.
Oh yeah, no, we should, yes.
Another little invention from the Victorians.
Right, they're so good. So, you know all of those strapless dresses and off-the-shoulder numbers? Well, you know, how many chemises can you have? I almost elbowed you in the cleavage.
I'm well paid.
So they came up with this idea of like having an opening at the top of the shoulder, and then you could just unbutton it and the shoulder would drop and you tuck it away in your corset after you got dressed, and it would not show your bodice. So that's very handy. Bras don't do that. No. No, they don't. Right, so, and now I won't flash you in case of incident.
As we continue.
Yes, let's pass this around. So this is my one petticoat, fairly lightweight. It's also about 5 yards, Connie. So if you're counting, we're up to what, like 15 yards of fabric? Yeah. It's really a small amount compared to some of my ensembles. Because the more furbelows you add, the more fabric.
And so how do you store these? What's your storage space like?
So,
Trunks or what?
I just got rid of a lot of my modern time traveling clothes because who needs more than 3 garments? They're all black anyway. So, and I hang my big things up in a wardrobe, a closet. Things like the underpinnings, I put in a bureau. And the petticoats, the chemise, the corset, I actually roll them in a sort of, just a little jelly roll sort of action. I don't bend the bones in the corset, but I just roll it. And then I just shove it in the bureau. The corset cannot be washed. Has different cleaning. But all of my underpinnings can go in the regular wash and be abused as much as I like, which is why you want lots of underpinnings, because the outerwear cannot be washed. It must be dry. Well, it could, but we don't. Not with this trim.
No.
Not with this trim. It can't be washed. So, but you need to be able to clean it. Yes, dry clean. In periods in the 19th century, they actually would have carefully taken the garments apart, carefully unpicked any trim, and hand washed it very delicately for the finer things.
Or spot clean.
And now they did that with kimonos.
Yes.
And historically, kimonos were taken completely apart and washed and stretched and flattened and
then
sewn back together again.
So, yes.
Your storage method.
Yes.
Is that period accurate?
So they would have like a clothing press or a wardrobe or something like that, or a bureau, and so big things would go in the press. Some things would have been hung, but of course space was very limited. Spaces were smaller. they also had fewer things. So a lady might have a regular sort of middle-class bourgeois woman might have a walking dress, an evening dress, an at-home work dress, and perhaps something for Sunday. So she'd have maybe 3 or 4 dresses only, yes.
At what level of class in Victorian society did this kind of dress go down? And where did it stop? Because obviously at some point.
Right, no, it did. Well, I mean, some of it's very unpractical for like factory work. So you see a big change with like the fashions that the servant class wore. And so you might see a lady's maid or a valet wearing more fashionable things, but they're not going to be as fashionable as their employers. And so the silhouettes have to be narrower and less fussy, but they might have the fashionable shape. A pair of bodies or stays or corsetry of some sort, all women wore something, whether it was corded, stiffened with starch, not boned, not, heavily corseted. They wore them because they needed the support and to keep their assets out of the way. But they wouldn't have worn, say, a bustle cage and all of these layers that are very fussy if they're lower class or servant class even.
Hence the phrase, don't get your tits in the ringer.
Yes!
But they would scale it down too, like it would be a simple bustle, like a little pad, just to give it, an homage to like a larger and fancier, but say that would be made.
A maid.
But then, the lowest classes wouldn't even bother having
And they probably only had 1 or 2 sets of garments at those low classes, right? Like their workaday clothes, which would be several layers of petticoats and a chemise or shift, and something like a corset and a blouse or a bodice or shirtwaist, but they wouldn't have all of this very highly tailored sorts of things. So I am,
Usually the better stuff was kept in the family, and occasionally you would pass on the lesser stuff that's outdated to your servants.
Yes, and things would get remade unless you were quite wealthy, and then of course you didn't have time for that. You'd give those things to the highest echelon of servants for them to remake it instead. The Victorians were actually tremendous recyclers and upcyclers. They repurposed everything, threw away almost nothing, which is why we have so few examples of certain things to see in museums. And low-class clothing was used up.
But this is something they've been doing for quite a while in the hand-me-downs that they were doing.
Oh, forever. Yeah, no, it's sort of modern that we don't do this.
It's what we were teaching at the Renaissance.
Precisely. So, this is the bustle cage. I finished it with a safety pin because I am really professional. And there, you asked about storage. I love this, right? It's like, it's been rained on. There was an incident with dye. So, it looks like it take up a lot of space. How would you store that? Behold, the accordion.
Yay.
Stores flats. I don't know. That was so dramatic. And the look you gave me.
It looked like, I'm not going down there.
That was a wonderful look. He was just like, what are you doing? So other
we could
things.
have just done it like that.
I was feeling so dramatic. Yeah.
You're like,
Yes, like that. It was very well done. So the other fun thing, at least, about the kinds of bustles I make, I use spring steel, so they also will bend a lot and not lose their shape, which means when I want to sit, it bends in. When I have to drive a modern horseless carriage, I can in a bustle and corset. I mean,
Don't like to, but
want is such a
only
strong word.
imagine a police officer asking you to get out.
Woo! Look at that! It did happen to me.
And the response?
Oh my goodness. So I'm going to pass this to you. So the police officer claimed that I was following too closely to a car that did not exist on the road. So I feel like he was just curious. So he pulls me over. I had a friend also in a corset and ensemble next to me, but she was like more stripped down. And I was still like full sort of thing. And he's like, could I ask you to get out of the car? Yes, officer, of course. So there's this, I really need a chair to properly demonstrate.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Here we go, perfect for me. All right, so, excellent. Here I am. Great. This is normally in the corset-specific panel, but here we go. So I'm in the car, and I'm like this. He says, could I ask you to step out? And I'm like, oh, that sounds lovely. I'd really love to do that. Yes, please. And so then I have to do the process of like,
Ideally,
yes, officer! To get out of the car.
Did he offer to frisk you?
No, then he was like, could I have you walk in a straight line? Like, I just got out of that without dying, and you're concerned I'm not sober. All right. By the way, I was sober. And so I'm like, but yes, officer. So, I can't see my feet. I'm in a corset and bustle, and he wants me to walk a curb, and so I'm like, I hope I can find it. And so I'm walking a curb in this. He's like, that's a really interesting ensemble you're wearing. Yes. What do you do? Are you some sort of entertainer? Yes. Not the kind you seem to think. All right. Let me see if I can walk any more steps without seeing my feet. So I get like 3 steps. Don't die. Say, all right, could I have you touch your nose? You still think I'm drunk?
You are Madame Askew.
Yeah, no, right? So, yeah, he actually stands and watches me do this. Well, he actually watches this. Thanks. And he's like, all right, you're free to go, but watch out for that car you were following. I'm like, on the deserted road? All right. Good. Well, we could have had the talk about what I'm wearing. I was been happy to meet you for coffee. We didn't have to do this. I was very polite.
Did he watch you get back in?
Oh, yes. Yeah, and it was a reverse of what I did to get out. So good.
Oh, and what did he... Boy, can you imagine what he said when he got back from the precinct?
I mean, I wonder, because I really do think he saw this woman who was like Tits McGee driving down the road like this. It's like, I'm very curious about her. Let's pull her over. So I did not get a ticket.
Do you think he impersonated you at events?
I really hope so.
Police department?
I really hope there was like some impersonation, or maybe they use that story to like fundraise these clowns.
That's funny.
It's ridiculous. Yes.
This is kind of referring back to how you said it rained and there was the ink and
Yes.
dye incident.
The dye, yeah.
How important was it for like the bustles and all that to be kept pristine, or were they considered, oh, this is just the foundation and no one sees this, it can get a stain on it and I feel no shame about that?
It probably depends on the individual, much like with today. So some people are willing to wear underpinnings that are full of holes, look very disreputable, and they have no shame. And other people are like, if it doesn't match, if it's fresh, if everything isn't exactly right, I'm going to die of mortification. But they were underpinnings. They did get stained and torn, and you can see that they were repaired and used regardless. So some of these things, depending on the kinds of resources you had, you wouldn't really be able to keep replacing them. You might have only one, and you might have to make that one do for a year or 2 even, regardless of what happens. I think normally, depending, you had so many petticoats over the top that would really help keep something like your bustle clean, thank you. And also your corset. You wanted to keep your things that had baleen or whale.
Whalebone.
Thank you.
But also the chemise was key because it was the one that was right up against her body. So it was the one that was laundered regularly.
And those things would often be made out of white or unbleached fabrics so that you could, bleach them to get them really clean. Unlike what I did, where I'm very colourful as I'm a steampunk and I can do what I want. And I just wanted a really colourful set of underpinnings. So, because we haven't gotten there, but I wanted them to go with my mermaid bloomers. So, I needed to make a bunch of pink things to go with the bloomies. But, yeah, I think, a very wealthy lady would be able to toss something.
Would you like me to hold that for you while you...
So, like, the average woman, would that type of thing, she'd be like, whatever, and just move on with it?
Absolutely. It takes me 4 to 8 hours to sew up a new bustle cage. And depending on how much trim I'm going to do and how tired I am of cutting out fabric. And so I look at that and I say to myself, do I care 4 to 8 hours worth that it has dye stains on it? No. And so I think that that's very more in keeping with someone who has to be pragmatic about their time and resources. Whereas the daughter of an earl or a duke would say, oh, Daddy, I need more pin money. Or, Baron Rumpelstiltskin won't marry me because my bustle cage is stained. And Daddy'd go, I'm tired of keeping you, get a new bustle cage. So, yeah.
You have to have a proper ladies' trousseau.
Oh, yeah, you do, so. I think it depended, honestly. But the ones in the museums, you can see stains and wear and tear and repair on them. So, yes.
Is there a pattern company you recommend, or do you make your own patterns?
I mostly do not pattern draft. I do use a lot of patterns from Truly Victorian. And everything I've worn tonight that I've been taking off actually started with a Truly Victorian pattern. Now I adjust them, I modify them, I change them to please myself. But her patterns have a wonderful silhouette and the instructions are very approachable as long as you have made garments before. They're not a good straight up beginner place. So if you have not even made a pillowcase, please don't do that to yourself.
I think I might do the corsetry. That's what I'm going to do.
If I have made a pillowcase.
Yes.
Still don't try to go straight up.
I mean, you can go to the chemise.
Yeah.
You could do a chemise. You have to work up to this part. So
There you go, honey. I'll make you a chemise.
I already have Madame to make me an outfit.
That's also true. Joseph knows. He's got me wrapped around his finger. So
I've got this week off.
we're going to make that happen. So,
Crank it up.
how are we doing on time?
10:30.
10:30.
Yeah, you got 4 minutes.
10:26. 4 minutes. So we're not going to take off the corsets because that's a lot of time. So, but these are the final pieces you would have worn. The chemise, the split drawers, which are, these are scandalous split drawers. They're even split drawers. They have a double facing, and so when I'm feeling very cheeky, I open up the closure, and when I want to be more, respectable, I close them. But honestly, for sitting in a car or certain kind of movement, opening up the bottom of the leg allows me to move more freely. So
No, I wish I could do that.
I think we're going to make you a pair.
I'm
These
just going to show you mine
fabulous.
because I love the fabric.
They're so good.
My
Show,
split drawers.
show them all.
Very nice. Darth Vader.
Yes, I do this.
You are crossing your genres, you
My,
cheeky.
not genres, my fandoms.
You cheeky strumpet. space opera two-timer. So, three-timer. Three-timer, you're right! Three-timer! It's a menage a space opera. Did you know?
I've always known.
That's probably why you married me.
Oh, no, yes.
She keeps it shiny.
So we should pull down the other dress and talk about it a little bit. So yes, as we are both steampunks, we threw caution to the wind. Our underpinnings are out of coloured fabric. If you wanted to be historically accurate, you wouldn't do that, although petticoats would often be quite elaborate, beautiful affairs. But the chemise, the shift, the split drawers would not. A corset could be quite ornate, but it's a big investment to have a more ornate corset. I like these little war horses underneath because I put all of my time into the outer garments. So, you asked about boning. This bodice is boned. There are bones that run down these back princess seams and bones at centre fronts. And sometimes people would also bone the darts in the front as well. This is sort of a softer silhouette, so I don't bone those darts, but the other bones really help it be smooth. This one is lined in cotton organdy, which I like because it's lightweight, but still very strong fabric. And it's cotton with linen on top, so it breathes. And that's what, about 3 yards that goes into the bodice, I think?
Yeah, the bits between the bits and pieces.
Do you treat the linen before you cut it?
Depends. I usually don't wash for these things because I'm not going to ever launder them after I construct them. I do press everything on a very hot iron, or Temperance takes mercy on me and presses them with a very hot iron. And part of why you want to do that is because the linen does have a bit of a finish, and so if you use a hot iron and go in the direction of the grain, very straight rather than like around in circles, you will reinforce that sheen.
Yes, I noticed that on your underskirt.
Yes.
It had a very nice sheen to it.
Yeah, so
even though it's an underskirt.
Right, so the thing about linen is that the flax wants to break. So those flax threads want to break, and the more you crinkle it up, the more you wad it up, the more you bend it, the more those will break and lose their sheen. So you want to sort of seal it in with a hot iron, and then just keep pressing straight and try not to crinkle it up. This needs another press. Probably won't get it tomorrow, I love you, but really hot. So, and this is a more accurate representation of one of my skirts. So, all the pleats, and you can see the insides, that it is completely flat-lined to give it support, and part of that is because it needs it because of the weight of the pleats. All right, so yes.
Did you have any aha moments in San Diego when you went to the sewing event?
Oh, costume
that
polish.
you've applied to these garments?
So I was already constructing this piece, but I did have aha moments that I will be applying to. This is actually a mock-up. So we'll be applying to the final garment. So one of the things is that I did do with this is putting the edge of the skirt all the way to the ground under the pleats to support the pleats. And the other thing is, in the really high-end ones, they would tack the centre of the back pleat to the skirt to really support it. If you leave it loose, it sort of moves nicely, but it's nice to support your pleats. So
they're not quite as crisp. They
right.
Hold that.
So this is a very soft look. By next one, I want to be crisper. So that's the big one. There were some other things about the way seams were finished on the inside of like a Worth gown, where they overcast all the seam edges and did all this handwork. And I was like, well, I suspected that was the case. And it's lovely, but I probably still won't do that because I don't have a room full of small French women with tiny hands working for $1 a day. So,
oh shoot.
feel really bad about OSHA and everything. So this is the overskirt. In the Polonaise, this is attached to the bodice, but in a more traditional bustle dress, it's separate. And all of this is linen on purpose because it's hot. So, and this is 3 pieces. So 2 wings and a front apron. One of the things I like about this one is called the wash overskirt, and it has a very cunning construction where you can make it flat for washing. So it was intended to be washed.
It will be dry clean.
Oh yes,
But
I can also take this out for the dry cleaner.
Right.
So it goes from being a really ruched up
I
garment
bet they love you.
to the flat. Yeah, they will appreciate me
They're
much
gonna
more.
love this one.
So yes, this had what, like 5 yards in this, probably 6 to 8 yards in that one, Connie, the one you're holding. So if you're still cold, Michelle, drape the skirt. So, all right. We have time for questions until they kick us out.
And are there pockets in these?
Now, I do not typically put pockets in the overskirts because they are so lightweight that the pocket will show.
Right.
But if I wanted to, I could put a pocket in this waistband hanging down, and it would be really supported, like a fanny pack, which we don't like to say in the F word. Means something a little bit colourful.
Oh, that's true. It
Yes.
has a different
Yes,
definition.
Mm-hmm. So, but yes, you could hang one in
They
that.
didn't really name those girls Fanny, did they?
I mean, not anymore. They did in the 19th century, but my Aunt Fanny takes on. Yes.
I lost my Aunt Fanny in that horrible hoop skirt fire. 1973. Were you there? Are we related like a Dickens novel?
Yes.
What happened?
Yes. Was it Charles Dickens' first wife died in a hoop skirt fire, or was it? One of the other starchy old white men he wrote.
You mean all of them?
There's so many in the 19th century.
Ambrose Bierce?
Because
I think it was Dickens.
no,
it wasn't.
Because he
Or was it Wells? Because he had like that weird thing with his sister-in-law that was
I
very
think it was Wells
dodgy.
because Dickens had the affair with the girl, and then there was that whole train incident.
Oh yeah.
And then he was just on this thing.
Boy, they had some times. 19th century literature, like Jerry Springer, behind the scenes. Yes. Did you have your hand up? No.
I do remember that, seeing you sew that
Yes.
just this last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
was
took me
going on.
2 days to press in all the pleats, and then the skirt goes together very fast, and then setting the pleats, and then there was the ruching. Yeah. So that
And she handmade the bias trim.
you know, that's what you do if you want it to match. So, yes.
What kind of fabrics did they use?
So natural fibres.
They did use that.
Absolutely. Synthetic fibres did not happen until
Rayon.
the 20s and 30s. Rayon came in for certain in the 30s and was big in the 40s. By the 50s, you start getting polyester. Yeah, no, they were like, plastic? We love it. Let's make fabric. Sounds good.
Don't get it close to the
Back
fire.
into the
Right.
Again,
Imagine that with a hoop skirt.
did they use silks? Or
They used a lot of silk if they had the money for it. Linen was wildly common until the cotton gin and cotton became more affordable. Cotton was even sort of like frowned on a bit for a while, although India cottons and things were printed. India cottons, especially in the Regency, were turned into dresses. Wool was very popular, extremely popular. And there was even the, there's this wholesome underpinnings movement where they were like, if you want to be really healthy, your best bet is to make all of your underwear out of wool and go.
Oh, yes.
So the good thing is they had different weights of wools, but still, you know how wool smells when it gets wet.
Like a sheep.
Like a sheep. Yeah, and I personally am allergic to lanolin, so I'm always like, no, that's a terrible idea, poor Fanny. Let's not do that, shall we?
That and Fanny would die in a different fire.
Because it would be a fire. So good.
Rash fires.
Woo! Rash of fires. I see what you did there. So terrible. So I do wear wool, but I usually have it lined and not next to my skin, or I do something called super wash, where they wash out the lanolin. But yeah, they would use only natural fibres, and it was a lot about what they could get access to, right? So in the New World, you had more cotton. In Europe, you had so much linen. And linen really is a lovely, lovely fabric. It just requires a little bit of preparation. And honestly, the flat lining I have in this skirt will keep it from wrinkling as much if I did not flatline it. So.
Flatlining is.
You're basically taking two fabrics, putting them together to form one fabric.
So the lining that you.
Yeah.
But then the seams are open, and part of why I love it is it is actually a historical technique. But so much easier to alter your garment if you don't have to pull out an enclosed lining.
No, that is such a good idea.
Yeah. Is there a panel after us, or we just like?
No,
This is it.
Oh,
This is
good.
it.
When you're done, you're done.
All right, I just want to make sure I'm not that panelist because I have been. Yes.
What's the best way to clean a corset?
Oh, no. Good question. So first of all, please never submerge it in water. A fairy will die. Her name will be Madame Askew.
Do you pre-wash the fabric?
No, not for a corset. But I meant to have you actually feel me up a little bit, because I don't want to take it off. So, pardon me, my love. Feel this fabric.
Yes.
Right? So, who else needs to feel the corset in a non-lascivious way?
A lot of hands went down.
Who needs to feel it in the lascivious way?
I do mostly spiral bones, and then I do like the flat spring steel in strategic areas. They would have used baleen a lot, or reed. Eventually they started using the metal as well, but they had to get to a point when it would not rust on them. So that was a technology advancement. Yeah, I'll switch with you. So I would not wash it because the coutil has a finish that keeps it stiffer, and that's what I want. So, and if you feel the edge, you will feel how thin it is as well, which makes it more comfortable. So this is actually made out of 2 layers of fabric, but it's very thin. Yes. Right, so you can make a corset out of canvas if you want, but it will be so heavy and stiff and scratchy, and it will stretch, whereas the coutil will not stretch on you very much because it's woven in a herringbone, so the weave means it fights against any stretching. So, however, who else needed to feel up the corset? Yes, all right. It's a wholesome panel.
I can see you're not coming to me.
I'll come over to you. Yes. I'm saving you for last.
I'm clergy.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you clean?
So I clean mine with a solution of vodka, water, and I like to use Popov. Yes, I'm not going to drink it. And did you need to feel it up? So the Popov is high alcohol content, will make you blind.
Yes.
Don't drink it. Comes in a plastic bottle.
Oh,
Yeah, no, you can buy like a litre for $3. It's great for cleaning.
medicinal part.
Yes. Maybe made with potatoes. We don't know
Does
really.
it matter?
No, it's probably radiated from Chernobyl. But does a job on the cleaning. So
Bear that in mind.
I use really, really cheap vodka because it will not stain and ultimately it will not leave an odour behind because usually vodka is odourless. Pop off.
Potatoey.
It's the smell of death and Chernobyl. Just a little undertone of Russian misery in there.
Skid Row.
Yeah, probably. No, usually you get it like Circle K, which is a fine purveyor of alcohol. Or like deep in your fries, at like bottom shelf, where people weep at the alcohol. So, thank you,
This is my
Temperance.
cleaning alcohol. I'm not going to drink this.
No. So actually alcohol is a great cleaning agent if you need to kill things, but you want high proof. And so the filthier something is, the less water you want to mix. You can actually just use straight pop-off if you want. So
It might
yes.
smell like a
Yes,
distillery.
you will. Yes.
Does it have to be ethyl alcohol instead of like isopropyl?
I suspect isopropyl will work, but it might be more expensive than the pop-off.
And you don't want to drink that either.
No, do not drink that either. The thing is to get a very high alcohol content because what you're going to do is kill the bacteria in your corset. And you don't want to get it wet in the traditional way. So you stretch your corset out really flat, a spritz bottle, and you spray it with your alcohol. Ethyl or isopropyl.
This is why the policeman pulled you over.
Really, officer, it's my laundry detergent.
Whatever, I'm not the affluence alcohol.
I was just doing my windows. It will really clean your windows, by the way, also. But you spritz the garment, and you can do this with a number of things, as long as they can handle some dampness, although the way alcohol dampens things is different from water. I'm not a chemist, so...
Alcohol evaporates very quickly.
Thank you!
Okay.
Thank you, rocket scientist in the back.
The pop-off vodka is a high percentage content of alcohol, but there's still water in it. So it'll take a little longer to dry.
But not so bad. You can just throw isopropyl at it too. So you're going to spritz it, lay it out flat, and then take a towel, a dry towel, and sort of pat down any place there are stains, and usually you can lift the stain with that towel as long as it's clean. And then you are going to roll your corset gently, like a jelly roll, with another towel to pick up some of the moisture. And then this is the most important step. You're going to leave it very flat until it is bone dry. Here, that's about 2 hours. In New England, that's 3 weeks. So, but you want it to be absolutely bone dry, otherwise.
Rust in a dehumidifier.
Right. Oh yeah. No, otherwise it will
Or
rust.
next April.
Or next April. No, you're right. It's so humid. Or Seattle, where it will definitely be next April before it's dry. So that's how I clean my corsetry. It's also how I would clean some of my bodices if I just needed to freshen them and I couldn't get to a dry cleaner. So let's say I decide to head off to Mars for a month and, you know, my lady's maid says, no, I'm not going to Mars with you. Have you met the Martians? They're very cheeky and they're like fighting a civil war and it's ridiculous. So I might have to clean something on the road, or if I got a stain on it, the isopropyl or the pop-off, which is my go-to, would be a good way of like temporary in-between fix before I could get it to a dry cleaner. So, yes.
I want to know if the Martians wear the wing.
Yeah, no, just the Poles.
Oh.
Just the Polish hussars. Although the Martians really could take some, you know, like notes from the Hussars, because I don't think the Civil War has been going well for them. But we'd have to talk to Burroughs about that. He's the historian reported on Mars. Clearly, as a stodgy white fellow from the 19th century, totally accurate reportage. I actually love Burroughs, and I like, the John Carter stories. If you like purple prose, it's good. It's very purple. No. So yes, they are fighting. They should have the hussar wings. Great. Yeah, no, right? We should all have hussar wings. So good. Yes. Did you have another question? No. All right. Do you? Yes.
I just want to say that your assistant or whoever that does not want to go to Mars.
Yeah.
Clearly does not have England's best interest in mind, because how else are you going to bring civilization to those roots unless you bring the colonial goodness that is Queen and country to the Martians?
And I've told Kitty, she's a very good lady's maid, but I've said, Kitty, they don't even have a flag. We have to go. How can you have a country without a flag? Oh, they need us.
Maybe a little pie.
Yes, property, which we will of course take from India or one of our other
which also is property, which
yes, Madam.
What grew into in the early 20th century, where the woman might have one dress, but there was interchangeable
cuffs,
and
collars.
Actually,
I think that comes more out of menswear, because in the later part of the 19th century, gentlemen started getting removable cuffs and collars, and even disposable ones, because that was the part of their garment that got so filthy. It'd be very hard at a certain point to clean it, and it needed starching, it needed a lot more care.
And more pop-up.
Right? And we all know it's hard to get the pop-off from the Russians when you're going towards that front and it's winter. Works out poorly. So, they actually started using celluloid. It's a very bad plan. And then we'll talk about that tomorrow, the death of fabric and the explosions. And then they started using basically paper, cardstock, that they might sort of give the semblance of stitching, but was really just surface design. And those they would actually throw away when they were done with them. And you were saying that they would write notes on the
on their cuffs.
Clark's with the celluloid. We were going to get into this tomorrow, but the celluloid, when it became available, were exceedingly popular with clerks, because scratch paper or note paper was expensive, so they weren't going to give them. Hey, you can't just make notes and it has to be for a reason, for a document. You can't just have it for adding up tallies and stuff. So they would use their celluloid cuffs and write on those. And the reason why they liked the celluloid is because then you could just wash it right off, because it was plastic. Of course, more like a plastic explosive, but hey,
there's that part.
But they would make their notes on the cuffs, and then they could just clean them,
but not by the fire.
Hopefully.
Smart.
I mean, that whole gas lighting and candles and open fireplaces everywhere, very safe.
And the pipe smoking.
And the pipe smoking,
And
yes.
all that pop-up.
Yeah, and all the pop-up, yes. So, we are going to wrap up, thank you. We went almost 2 hours, so, an hour and a half. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll be here all day tomorrow doing panels. And Sunday we're having the Tea Scout meetup in the Con Suite at 2 p.m. So please come and have tea. Thank you. All right. Cheers. Thank you to our clergy member from the Druids. Appreciate. I feel very, blessed.
Now go put on clothes.
Yeah, I'm going to go put on clothes. Thank you.
Or a robe.
or a robe. What are we doing next? We're getting cocktails.
We're getting cocktails.
Right. I better put on clothes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition, and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.
You know, I lost my Uncle Dickie in a celluloid. Well, he's trying to put out my Aunt Fanny. It was a big, big family tragedy. Huge family tragedy. Fortunately, we still had about 20 other brothers, aunts, and...
Well, you know, I mean...
Thank you, Victorian era.
Yeah.
Yeah, the spare, and 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 the spare.
Victorian era, they kind of made family members like Pringles.